Hey, Peter.
Hey, what's going on, man?
I'm just looking over the memory alpha for the episode, trying to think about what we might talk about here. How about you? What you been up to?
Work's been a real B. Any bits or skits or anything you want to do for this one?
Well, nothing immediately comes to mind, but I do have, some thoughts about
what
where we might.
What are you playing? What is this?
What do you mean?
That fucking nasty slash fic music you used from last episode. Why am I hearing that right now?
What do you mean, Peter? I guess maybe there is something playing in the background because, one of our fans found Delta Arrow, a Vorik Ensign Kim slash fic.
Yeah, and
I just thought maybe we need to give our fans really what they love.
Joe, I listened to the podcast on the way to work this morning. I had to pull my phone out and skip forward through your voice.
Hey, listen, this one has additional tags of anal sex, mating cycles, and heat.
Listen, I'm going to tell you right now. Executive order, we are never going to do another goddamn Star Trek Voyager slash fic episode ever again. This is verboten. I'm putting my foot down. I got to be the people's champ on this one, Joe. No.
All right.
No.
All right.
That's been forbidden. 9.
Welcome to V'ger Please, a hateful voyage through the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
I'm your co-host, Peter.
We just got done doing the comedy bit you probably just heard, and I was desperate to find a way to fit in the fact that one of our fans found even dirtier slash fic for us.
Do not encourage these people, Joe. Do not.
I'm so happy I've unlocked these vistas.
No. These are vistas I knew existed and that I've, and hopefully the viewers the listeners at home have willfully turned a blind ear to as well. Some things belong locked away in your parents' basement, never to be.
Once you open one of these doors, I mean, it's just going to be too tempting. Someone's going to find something even worse. I'm counting on you, fans.
No.
But this episode that we're reviewing today, significantly less sexy. What was it, Peter?
We're into season 3, episode 17, Unity.
So this is obviously the first quote-unquote Borg episode. I guess that's a tiny bit of a spoiler, but we kind of already mentioned that last week, and the description mentions it too, so there it is. It's probably one of the better ones, in my estimation. So some interesting Trek stuff happened in this.
I'm going to look at this as a inner city drug deal, right? The first taste is free because I saw what they did to the Q, and I know that they're not done effing the Q in the A. It's the Borg's turn now. So I know it's going to get ugly, but this, if I was just a dude chilling out in 1990 whatever and you showed me a Star Trek episode and this Borg episode was in there, I'd be like, yeah, this was cool. I would like to have more of this. I think you might have a good story to tell, and I would like to sign up for your newsletter.
Agreed. Completely agreed. And this one was also directed by Robert Duncan McNeil.
Mm-hmm.
Probably why he is essentially not in the episode for the most part.
Kenneth Biller wrote this one, and I can't think of Kenneth Biller's extended contributions at this time, but I do know that he was responsible for Q and the Gray, which was a fucking shit show.
He also did the Shoot. He did Tuvix. He did a whole bunch of stuff that we've seen, both up and down. Like, he was responsible for Jetrel, but he was also responsible for Elogium.
The fuck, so, Kenneth the Shotgun Biller. He's just all over the place, man. Old spray and pray Biller. Maybe he'll hit pure gold. Maybe he'll hit you in the eye or the dick. Who knows?
So I think what this episode does right is it's a episode about the Borg that still makes the Borg scary even when it's not trying to be scary. And I think it's worth pointing that out now, because where Voyager goes wrong with the Borg is when they fuck that up. And this is an example of doing it correct, and I look forward to exploring why it is I feel that way. But my thesis statement on this is the reason why this one works is it'll be fun to take that reasoning and then apply it to some of the dog shit Borg episodes that we will see down the road, and be able to point out, like, here's why this didn't work.
We talk about the drow effect, the drow treatment, that is putting the spotlight on the creepy boogeymen of any sort of fantasy or science fiction property. It's something that the average person does not know about, and you have created this thing that needs to be scary and serve as an appropriate antagonist to your good guys, to raise the stakes for those encounters. And when you give it the drow treatment, you are dragging it into the sunlight. You are opening the pages of that book open wide, and you are saying, hey, here is every detail about this thing. So you now understand it inside and out. Maybe there's a cool little story to tell there, or maybe it's stupid and contrived and lame. But regardless, you now know this thing inside and out. It's not scary anymore. You've seen it with the lights on.
We should point out that the drow treatment is out of the misguided attempt to say, oh, you liked this thing that was previously mysterious and scary. Clearly, I interpret that to mean I should just give you so much more of that and explain more of its background,
right,
which is not what you should do.
I think in this case, we haven't gotten to the drow treatment yet, because everything that this episode is going to cover is things that I think any attentive fan could come to their own conclusion on. And we're going to talk broad strokes before we get into the scene by scene, but all of these Borg used to be somebody once upon a time. And when you join the collective, you lose that individuality, but when you are removed from the collective, maybe that comes back. And we saw it to a certain extent in Next Gen with Hugh, and then later on Descents Part 1 and 2, where the impact of Hugh rejoining the collective with his individuality ruins the collective, and Lore, Data's evil twin brother, is able to kind of capitalize on that and make himself king of the misfits. But the Borg in Descent 1 and 2, which are like these roving, mean-spirited mercenaries working for Lore, and maybe it's because Lore was ultimately an evil android and it was only giving him bad emotions, but this is the other side of that coin. What happens if it's an organic thing, some sort of industrial accident, and these people get the spark of life back on their own? So it's a Borg story. There's scary Borg parts to it, but ultimately it's something you knew that might happen. I don't think they're really ruining anything. They're not ruining the mystique. It's just like enhancing, like, oh god, those are really just people in there after all.
Right, which they previously established. And I'll get to kind of the horror I like about this episode when we kind of get through the plot points. But where do we start out with this, Peter?
Well, before we start off with it, let's look at the big Star Trek picture, because do you have a memory of what's...
I do. I have it open.
What year did this come out?
This would be February 12th, 1997.
So this is right before First Contact. I think the last time that we would have seen the Borg in Star Trek would have been, geez, I don't even know what the last encounter in Next Gen would have been. Maybe
it would have been Descent, yeah.
So the last time we saw the Borg, they were scattered and effed up and under Lore's control. Paramount and the start, Rick Berman, they're getting ready for a blockbuster and arguably the best Next Gen movie of them all, First Contact, which is where they really swing for the fences with it. So this is kind of a big deal. Borg are, of course, a fan favorite. There's some pretty high expectations, and this is going to be the appetizers to the main course of First Contact in the theaters.
Sorry to correct you, but First Contact had come out in November 1996.
Did it?
Yeah. So I remember from reading the Memory Alpha from last week that the reason why they waited until now for the Borg to show up is they were waiting for that movie to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So First Contact has reestablished the Borg as a big pop culture thing. First Contact, probably the best Next Gen movie, certainly the most financially successful. And so the pump was primed because that was just months prior for the Borg to show up in Voyager, and obviously they got teased last week, and here we are starting to tease it out a little bit.
Star date wise, did First Contact already happen by the time this happens in Voyager?
Let's see. Stardate for First Contact was 50893.5, and this is 50614.2. So this technically happened before First Contact in universe.
The Borg Queen getting her shit wrecked at the end of First Contact. It's not like this is really inappropriate that the Borg are up and functioning.
Correct.
I'm sorry, using this as a snapshot, this looks like the Borg are in complete disarray, so I guess it would jive even if First Contact did happen before. But
as we'll talk about, this Unity is just really a tiny, just one cube, random shit happened to it. So what was happening with the rest of the Borg doesn't really necessarily matter.
Fair enough. This is the right kind of a bottle episode, I suppose.
I would agree. Where does it start?
So we start off in a Type 2 shuttlecraft. Chakotay is in there, and wisely, we have not placed Captain Janeway and Commander Chakotay in the same place, in the same rickety little life barge, speeding towards a life of many deaths.
I mean, I figured you would appreciate the fact that we're opening yet another Voyager episode with yet another fucking shuttlecraft accident.
You know what? At a certain point, you just lose count and it becomes par for the course, and it's just like...
I remember when you were going to try and start to keep track of this, and I was laughing to myself, like, when is he going to give up? Like, it is such a trope that this show has shuttlecraft accident after shuttlecraft accident that the show internally acknowledges its own trope eventually as a plot point.
Well, we got Chakotay, and we have someone that I'm pretty excited for, which is Ensign Kaplan, who has a fair amount of dialogue, and she's a plucky assistant to Chakotay. They're out doing some, I don't know, they're trying to get a lay of the land. They're still on the Nekritic Expanse, which was a big deal back in Fair Trade. This is that section of space where Neelix knows nothing and Voyager's kind of flying blind, even though they have all that telemetry data from Threshold, but we don't talk about that. And when we pick up with Chakotay and Kaplan, we find out that their shit's all fucked up and they have been flying around in circles for the past 2 hours and they're effectively lost.
Ensign Kaplan, who's been kind of like a background figure in a few episodes before, but I think this is the first time that she's had lines as far as I'm aware, is definitely a plucky go-getter, but suffering from a bit of stereotypical lack of direction. And they end up picking up a distress call after detecting a signal buoy with a Federation signature, which they originally think, oh, that must be Voyager, obviously. And then they go to the signature, get the distress call, and the distress call specifically says, hey, Federation vessel, help us, which they are immediately like, what? Well, I think even Kaplan says, like, how would anyone know that we're from the Federation out here in the lawless Delta Quadrant? Like, what the actual fuck? Why would anyone be asking it for us by name? Which I feel was like a pretty natural response, but at the same time, with our jokes about Delta Quadrant next door, word's probably out that we know word's out that these Federation guys are, rampaging through the Delta Quadrant causing chaos and disorder in their wake, but this was definitely more of a not, hey, Voyager, strange ship from across the galaxy. It was said like somebody who knows what the Federation is.
I meant to bring it up in our opening. We've touched on how much good sci-fi is out there right now. And I started watching this series on Netflix, Love, Death, and Robots. Have you touched on it at all yet?
I never even heard of it.
Check it out. It's real good. And it's one of these anthologies. It's kind of like the Twilight Zone of animated and CGI sci-fi stories. It's really good. And there's one story out there in specific. It's called Beyond the Aquilus Rift. And I don't want to spoil stuff, but it involves a ship going into warp and ending up very far away than where it should have been. And things get pretty dark in it. And it just reminds me of how good of a story Voyager had to look at, like, on paper when they pitched it. Like, Voyager, Federation crew, way far away from home, and it's very dangerous, and it's going to be a brutal trip back. And of course, it gets watered down to the point where none of that matters. But this little setup they've got here, what if Voyager's not the only Federation ship that has fallen victim to the caretaker or whatever other New Jersey abduction alien plot point out there to get another ship out there? And what if they did not fare as well as Voyager has, and you just come across other, people that are from the Alpha Quadrant stranded miserably? What kind of terrible stories could you tell there? Scary stories, not bad stories.
To that point, if you recall, in the very first episode of the show, there is a suggestion that other ships from other races were pulled into the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah.
But they've never followed up on that, and I'm sorry to tell you, for the most part, they leave that untouched. I say for the most part because there is one example, and I won't say anything else, so it's not to spoil it for you.
Was it cheeky Ferengi on their pleasure planet of Underboob?
No, not the Ho Train planet. No,
fuck that episode.
Hey guys, let's go home. Wait, let's fuck around the Ferengi first, then let's go home.
But if we're gonna drag the Borg out in the queue and all this other stuff, we talked before about how they never
just take the Ferengi out back the chemical shed and shoot in the head. Fuck it.
They never have the time to close out the Kes and Neelix love situation that they could never find an episode to drop that missing footage into. And we see so many duds. We saw that damn Janeway mind parasite episode. All this garbage, but there's really good stories, I think, that are waiting to be told for Voyager that just do not get touched. And when they're laying out this thing, the Federation buoy, the stranded people, I was like, man, I know this is going to be a Borg episode, but what if? So it piques their interest, and Chakotay, being a good dude, decides we're going to go down and try and help these guys. I guess this would be a pretty big point against Chakotay on this one. I would think getting back to your ship and then bringing the whole ship to come and help them would have been the smart thing. But they pop off a message beacon, so when Voyager comes looking for them, they'll be able to find it, and they go to head down to the surface. I want to ask you this. Mm-hmm. How many days was Chakotay supposed to be out in the shuttle? Because I got the feeling it was like a multi-day mission.
Yeah, it does sound like that they were supposed to be out there doing this scouting run for a bit. I would assume that, the bunks on those tiny shuttlecraft there in the back are pretty uncomfortable, but you could probably do a few days in them.
Like, I think the Type 6 is bigger than, I don't know, I guess we haven't really seen a Type 2 that wasn't CG flying through space. They just seem really small to me. It seems like a runabout mission, not that, but you got to rough it when you're Voyager. On their way down to the surface, the shuttle miraculously lands without being shot down by Vidians or otherwise. Chakotay and Kaplan roll out and they start poking around, and this planet looks like a junkyard with a bunch of crap everywhere, and they say this place looks like a war zone. There's scorch marks, there's hobo fires.
I was going to say there's one specific house style to Berman era Trek as to how they portray shitty planets, and that is, it's the set. It looks like it is a Las Vegas casino hotel that's half built with a bunch of sawdust and 2x4s lying around with strategically placed hobo fires every fucking time. That's what it fucking looks like. Remember the episode where they introduced Ro Laren?
Yes.
And they go to the Bajoran camp.
Yeah.
It's
the
got
terrorist weapons.
Or the episode where they've got there's the planet that's has part of its race is a bunch of gypsies, mm-hmm. and they want to try and reunite, and they go to negotiate.
Authoritarian police dudes that have the American Gladiator blue skin tight uniforms, and they all have white swoops in their hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It always looks like this.
yeah, if there are some sort of terrorist factions at play, this is what your planet's going to look like.
And I would love for at some point a Starfleet officer that has like some veterancy, you know, has some experience to like beam down and to see this and be like, get to cover, emergency beam out. I see 3 hobo fires within
Wait, hold on a second.
a 90-foot radius.
Everybody see a third fire, because it's like when you know you're in the hood, right? When you can see a rent-a-center, a Dollar Tree, and some sort of like Sally's Discount Beauty and a chicken place, you're in the hood. Doesn't matter how nice the neighborhood next to you is. Like if you can see those things, you're in the hood. And I get where you're coming from. Yeah, this is way too many hobo fires. We need to leave now.
And just for the record, those chicken places in the hood can be very delicious.
That's how they get you. Out there. That's how they lure you in. It's like a Federation buoy asking for. They don't get very deep into this failed casino construction zone before some dudes in cloaks show up and engage them in a pretty good firefight, man. Chakotay Ninja rolls over behind some junk. Kaplan gets in. These guys have like some Fallout mishmash pipe gun weapons that are shooting lawn gnomes and weird green plasma all over the place.
Yeah, they definitely look like they have like kit bashed weapons, and thankfully, obviously, they very unceremoniously kill off poor Ensign Kaplan here, but at least she gets to like represent a little bit. Gets a little action, takes one of the guys down with a phaser blast. Like, they at least give the poor red shirt, or in this case, yellow shirt, a chance to shine rather than just die.
Mm-hmm.
Sure enough, Kaplan gets aced. Chakotay gets hit by some sort of like bubble beam that doesn't immediately kill him, but gives him the shakes and puts him down. And it just so happens to be that's when a bunch of other hooded looking hobo aliens show up, one of which has like the goofiest flamethrower looking thing that has this terrible CG effect.
I thought that was cool.
Scares them off with the plasma flamethrower.
Yeah, the attackers go to move over and loot Chakotay, and yeah, the second group just shows up. This dude's got this "fuck you" gun. Everyone's like, "Oh no! I seen that burn people's faces off. I don't want any part of that." And they peace out. I thought it was a good fight. I liked it.
I did too. When Chakotay comes around, she sees that he's being sort of assisted by a woman that is clearly human. She says her name is Riley Frazier. She relates that Kaplan has died. The shuttle has apparently already been scrapped. That's what you get for parking your car in the hood.
Yeah, they got it up on cinder blocks. They got the engines off.
Riley Frazier very specifically describes how it is that she, a human, is on this planet along with other aliens from the Alpha Quadrant. And quite notably, nothing she says is a lie. Because what she says is that they were attacked by some aliens. Some were killed. Others were put in stasis. And then she woke up on this planet along with several Romulans, Klingons, and Cardassians. They were all grabbed from where they were. And they have shown up on this planet. And sure enough, some old racial hatred has broken out and has caused conflict. None of that's specifically a lie.
Yeah, you might recognize this story as a version of the 37s that does not suck complete ass. And it's funny that no point during this entire episode do they mention the 37s, because like you said, her whole story we have already seen as plausible, that there can be humans of different types and people who should be at odds that just get scooped up and end up for one reason or another in the Delta Quadrant, along with their beat up old Ford trucks. So this fits the format. The most jarring thing about this is they are on this dump garbage fire of a world. And she looks like something out of a 1950s pinup. She's got
great hair.
Flowing,
best hair.
Beautiful blonde hair in this very modest dress, and her manners are very nice. Like you said, we find out that we'll ultimately find out that she was a Starfleet scientist.
Yep.
And it just really sticks out as the stark contrast to the world around Chakotay. And there's a little bit of misdirection here, and I'll get into what I thought was going to happen in this episode later. But right now, it's just kind of unnerving that there could be this lady that does not fit at all with the environment around her. But yeah, she lays the story out to Chakotay, and there's no glaring holes in it. Things are not looking too great for Chakotay. He's got some neurological damage he took as a side effect of whatever prison-style shank weapon was used on him.
Right.
And funny enough, the base that he's going to be chilling out in for the majority of this episode is actually a redressed version of the chute, which was also used as the Necritic Expanse border colony. So,
speaking of the Expanse, we cut back to Voyager after we get this backstory, and they link this back to the Fair Trade episode where they're still traveling through the Necritic Expanse. And, it's taken them quite a long time to get through this region, and it's not well mapped, and it's all kind of gnarly. And that is why Chakotay and Kaplan were out there. They're trying to scout kind of a faster way to get through this part of space. And, they're doing their normal, Tom's having a little fun saying that, there's just nothing that's been interesting for the last few days, and that's not something you ever tell your boss, because that's when your boss gives you a new assignment.
What that is a key insight into how powerful those Federation antidepressants are. And we've joked about this before, the amount of terrible shit that this crew has seen. And for Tom to even be as crazy enough to be like, man, you know what? I'm really sad that we haven't been forcefully boarded by roving space Nazi organ thieves or telepathic.
Really spices up my day when we run into a bunch of Kmart.
Yeah. Like the fact they show up kind of just twitchy, like, nope, cool as a cucumber.
Thank God we haven't run into something that's tried to kill us for the last few days. I was able to get my fucking tomato soup in peace. No.
Yeah.
No, Tom can't let sleeping dogs lie. He's got
bugs that came on and, we're spawning out of wounds in our neck.
Yeah, I really need alien disease eggs growing out of my neck to really feel like my day was fulfilling. But as if on cue, they find a interesting navigational hazard in front of them, and when they get it on screen, what should it be but a motherfucking Borg cube, baby? It is big and bad and
square.
Right there in front of their face, and they quickly throw shields up and are like in panic mode.
This is your worst case scenario as Starfleet on this ship, because the Borg have run hot dick up through the Federation over and over, and this is a no win for you. So I think they do a good job in the episode portraying that moment where everybody's blood turns cold and everybody just wants to get the fuck out of there. But old crazy trap queen Janeway's like, no. They seem like they're turned off, or they're adrift for some reason. And they're like, yeah, maybe they're just playing possum, so we fly up and they can snatch our ass. And she's like, challenge accepted. Tom laying a course.
I will say that Tuvok does mention that there's no record of any tactics by the Port of the Borg where they play possum. So they do momentarily, kind of confront that idea. I will say that I think this episode would have been better if there was something in between it where you have the Voyager crew really starting to have to think about, oh fuck, if we run into the Borg, we're out here by ourselves. As noted, they run all kinds of hot dick over the Federation, and they start to consider what are our options? How do we fight the Borg? What are our tactical procedures? Maybe them trying to make a deal with some locals for some kind of anti-Borg Texas are on the fringes of Borg space or something like that. There could have been a story there that they could have told that was about Voyager kind of girding themselves for the eventual reality that they're going to have to go through Borg space.
I would have liked Voyager to pop out for a second and there to actually be some sort of a staff meeting, once they reach relative safety, about what do we do? I think that Janeway off the cuff making the decision to drag the entire ship to a very real doom felt off. And I think that another conversation to have on this in that staff meeting would have been Tom or one of the other more bleeding heart types to say, hey, look, this isn't just our life on the line. If we go there and this ship wakes up and snatches us and they assimilate us and they get our database, we've got 3 years of rolling through the Delta Quadrant and all of these little pockets of interesting civilizations that have thus far evaded Borg interference. And we know from the last episode that the Borg are out here actively assimilating people. Maybe it's been luck, maybe it's been because the Skeevians or whoever have taken steps to protect themselves, but we are going to hand them a treasure map of stuff to go jam tentacles into and assimilate.
I think mostly I'm with you. This needed some kind of beat that justified the risk. It didn't exist. That's the bottom line for me. Mm-hmm. But whatever, we're making the episode work. They decide, let's stick our nose in this, and hopefully we won't, trip and fall down onto an assimilation tube and turn into a space zombie. That would be tragic. Back on the planet, we've got Chakotay, trying to feel out what's going on this planet with Frasier and all that, but he's having brain problems still from whatever happened to him, and he's starting to fade medically, and he's not much use, and it's clear that they imply through the caginess of everyone at the settlement without saying that they're not necessarily nefarious, but they are definitely holding something back. I think that was well done on their part. You kind of felt the deception without it being like too obvious,
Well, you don't even get to see anybody else in the settlement until he eventually escapes the little quarters that she's provided for him. And a couple interesting things happen in this scene while he's starting to really bond with Riley. We are treated to the fact that Chakotay's a vegetarian, and that because like any other vegan or whatever, he makes a point in shoving it in her face.
It's got to make sure he talks about it.
I'm kind of wondering where all these peas and cabbages came from. That they didn't put the budget into getting alien food here, but to his medical ailment specifically, as this bonding scene goes on, he keeps bringing his hand up to like touch the side of his face, and he's got this black, like, I don't know, necrotic, veiny material that's starting to spread out from what looks like an invisible, like a wound site, but there's no wound on his head. It's just this blackening, tendering mass. I know that those people are all ultimately going to be Borg. I don't know if they're good Borg or bad Borg or what. And there's stuff that just is not adding up in this scene for me. The fact that Riley looks so picture perfect. The fact that the shelves in the kitchen where they're working on are like pristine commercial grade restaurant shelving. And that I can see very clear cabbages and peas. And it's like, this stuff shouldn't be here. This should all be bombed out and look like shit. She should look like a Fallout Wasteland character, not something storybook quality. And he keeps going up to his head and touching it. And I'm like, what if right now Chakotay's really laying on a table somewhere and there's a Borg implant dug into the side of his head and he is being warmed up to these people in a VR construct, and this is a big slow con.
I mean, there's a lot of potential in what they choose to not show and show that there's a little bit of caginess on everyone's part. We're obviously have already talked about what's actually going to happen here.
Yeah.
But, they respect the audience's intelligence enough here that I really liked it.
I guess I was, because he kept touching this wound on his head that was getting worse and worse. Like, Star Trek's always been this thing, like there can be invisible implants or things going on that's imperceptible to the crew, but you have this physical ailment that accompanies it. And I was really putting my money on the fact that there was in real life some sort of an implant jammed in his head, and that this was all a line of fantasy.
I kind of liked that they played it straight, and that it was just that. I mean, they obviously did some level of deception, but it wasn't quite that level of deception.
Right.
They do just enough to make what the cooperative ultimately does to seem pretty benign, but still wasn't. Which is, I guess this is a good time for me to talk about what I liked. So, long story made short, Chakotay eventually breaks out of his cell. He finds out that the people that he's in this settlement with are former Borg drones. They are the drones that were from the very cube that Voyager has found. And they were cut off from the Borg as a whole due to a freak electrical storm that just so happened to strike in such a way that they were cut off from the rest of the collective, and the collective doesn't really know what happened to them, so no one's come to try and find them. And they've been, as a consequence, been stuck with their individuality ever since. And what this has done is bred natural resurfacing of resentment among the drones from their prior lives, and has started to fracture the settlement and created a power struggle. What I really love is that the quote-unquote nice protagonists, the people that Chakotay deals with, right? They are uniformly portrayed as warm, inviting, morally correct, good people. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. And at the forefront of all that is a Romulan. He's got a really good speech in there. And he's like, hey, look, we're sorry we deceived you, but everybody knows that the Borg are bad guys, and we were bad guys, but we're victims in all this. We were not willing participants in this terrible stuff. But through this tragedy, we've come out with a new lease on life. And I have been raised to hate the Federation and Klingons, but I understand now we're all just people, and, we need to make this thing work and get along.
The part of the horror of this episode that I really liked was that despite the fact that the protagonist former drones are morally upstanding, they still do things that are definitely bad. And particularly what they end up forcing Chakotay to do later on in the episode, out of what they see as their quote-unquote right thing to do to preserve the lives of everyone on the planet. And it kind of, they have a dependence on the idea of being connected psychologically that they can't shake. And it communicates in a subtle and I think effective way the damage that connection had done to all of them, that it bred a kind of aching addiction, maybe, to that idea that the good people in this episode could think of no way to get out of their current predicament except to strip the individuality from everyone and reintegrate themselves into a collective. And that, I'm a sucker for a little philosophical depth, right?
Mm.
And that was just enough for me to be like, yes, I like it. I like what you're trying to say here.
So we're skipping pretty far ahead, but since we're going to discuss it now, I sympathize with what we're going to eventually end up calling the co-op, right?
Yeah.
And this is the camp of good guys who want to farm and get along and be nice. And then you've got the more hostile elements, which you've fractioned off and are attacking them. I get it. And I think at the end of the day, I'm a ends justify the means type of guy. I don't really blame or villainize the cooperative for the stuff they do because they are trying to survive. There's a very clear path for them to survive. They understand the subject material better than Chakotay and Starfleet does. So when they say, hey, when we are asking you to do the stuff that you view as a threat that could bring more Borg and cause problems, we know that it won't. We're going to protect and stop from happening. We need this thing so we can all live in peace. I get it. And I think the only part where I acknowledge is what they're doing as unjustifiably wrong is the fact that as Chakotay gets closer and closer with this group, he says, hey, look, what you got here is pretty cool, but we got a ship that's coming in orbit. Everybody who wants to get off this war-torn hellhole and be among congenial minds who also want to live in peace and get along and Federation values, basically, come on up, man. We got plenty of room. And no one, we got Maquis up there. My own people are up there. We got space cats and space elves. We don't say no to people. This guy's gotten us in so many fucking problems. We haven't even blown him out of the airlock once. And Riley ultimately says, no, this is our home. We have to stay here. There's a very good opportunity for them to fix the situation without violence, and it's by removing themselves from a planet where they're not even supposed to be, and she turns it down. And that's where I think your argument about there's a dependency here, there's an addiction here, that I think it really rings true.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned, is that they had options other than what they chose to do, and they chose to do this because that's desperately what they wanted to do. And as kind and as kind of like neutral good oriented as they appear in every other way, there's still this dark specter of their experience as Borg that has molded them in such a way that they decide that they want to take this dramatic action that takes away other people's agency, and they think it's the only thing that they can do, even though that's clearly not true.
But before we get to any of that, we've got Chakotay, who has just realized what's going on here. He realizes it by coming up on Riley, who has her A+, very expensive top shelf blonde wig off, and we see the entire back of her head is like machine. And they confront him and say, hey, look, sorry, we didn't want to scare you, but yeah, we're a bunch of weird amputee people, former drone dudes. Riley lays out the story. She's like, yeah, everything I told you was true, but here are the specifics. I was on the USS Roosevelt, and I was at the Battle of Wolf 359, and I got, abducted and assimilated. Although I thought it was really cool that they shouted out 359 and kind of give you some idea into what happens to some of these ships that get wrecked there. But doesn't that cube eventually get brought down in the Alpha Quadrant?
Yeah, so this is the part that never quite makes much sense. This isn't the last time we'll run into somebody who says they got assimilated at Battle Wolf 359 either. But unless there's some sort of Borg like escape pods that go to transwarp or something, I don't know, like a sphere like you see in First Contact, no one would have survived from the Borg from the Battle of Wolf 359 because they headed to Earth after fucking everybody up, and then they got destroyed by Data basically. I like that they want to flavor it by saying, linking it back to something that was a big thing in Trek, but it's a bit of a continuity fail whenever they invoke it. Everyone involved with that died, including the Borg, as far as we're aware. And if there is a different explanation, none has been offered.
But Chakotay's kind of reeling at the idea of this. The wound on his face is getting worse, and this Romulan doctor that we talked about earlier, who was a good poster boy of like, hey, we can see past skin and homeworld and all that stuff and just get along if we want to. He's like, hey, look, and he's got a pretty good all the Borg prosthetics in this look good. And there'll be a drone later that I really want to harp on how good and scary he looks. But this Romulan doctor, he's got like this big mechanical eyepiece and like some Edward Scissorhands stuff going on. And he's like, this hoopty gun that shot you, it's no good. Your brain's rotting and it's going to kill you. But we have this thing we can do that will fix it and normally when they're like, here's established Trek technology canon and we're going to drastically alter it. This networking that the Borg do, right? This Wi-Fi network they're all on. It's not just about transmitting orders and instructions and data. There is also a regenerative quality to it, like wireless charging, right? And you're getting all of this energy.
Yeah, it's a good way of describing it.
And it can be remetabolized basically and repair damage, and that's part of why we're so relentless. And Chakotay's like, well, it sounds to me like you're trying to get me to drink your Kool-Aid and join your cult, and you're not putting any USB jump drives in my fucking head, so just back up off me. I'll roll the dice and wait for Voyager to get here. And that's where we kind of leave off on them. Meanwhile, up at Voyager, they have now sped towards the cube. They've confirmed that the lights are out over there, and Janeway wants to move forward on this expedition onto the ship to investigate and see what treasures can be had. She makes it seem like it's a big deal getting on a Borg cube to poke around, but Enterprise ran enough away team missions on there. Like, is it really that big of a deal?
It's a little bit different, I think, when the life or death of the Federation is in hand, so you got to take some risks and that sort of thing. Janeway's reluctance to ultimately get involved with these people and help them do this, I think, is a natural consequence of their isolation. I mean, for all of our Janeway Trap Queen jokes, she doesn't want to expose Voyager to monkeying around with turning shit on in a Borg cube if she doesn't have to.
Right.
Because so there's no one to bail her out.
Yeah. Right now, everything's turned off. Large portions of the ship have been exposed to vacuum. I thought the Borg set looked kind of hokey, and once I read the Memory Alpha notes, I understood why. The Borg interior shots were the smallest stage assembled for this, and is basically a curved hallway with a little room. Robert McNeil was like, we had to get real creative with people turning around to make it seem like you're turning a bunch of corners, but I think ultimately it looked junky. And I've seen so many good Borg sets that seeing this thing, it looks like something someone built in their basement.
The Voyager has figured out, essentially, the same thing that Chakotay's been told about this cube, that all the drones are dead. But there is the possibility that you could reactivate the drones on a limited basis if there's accidentally like some sort of power surge into their backup units or something. It's basically a play for a quick jump scare in sick bay as they're.
I want to talk about that. They take a Borg who's been preserved in the vacuum of space. They bring it over, and you got B'Elanna, Kes, and the Doctor fooling around with this thing. And the makeup and prosthetics that they're using here are off of First Contact. And I guess I never really knew that there was a difference between them. When I think of Borg, I always think of like Descent and Hugh, and because that's the first time you can really see Borg in extended shots, standing still, and like what the implants really look like.
In good lighting too, yeah.
In good lighting. Well, this medbay lighting's super harsh. And when they show the face, man, like this drone, they make it look like a good fourth of his head has just been scooped out, and it is like steampunk diesel machinery, not like tubes and robotic plating, but like sharp 90-degree angle corners and gears and oil jammed into the side of this guy's head, and all the skin around it, it's like just loose and flappy, and it looks like a corpse that has been turned into a half robot. It doesn't look like a man with tubes and stuff. It looks like a robot that has a little bit of flesh wrapped around it. And that's an important distinction because it's very unsettling, and it's scary.
It definitely gives that space zombie feel to it, the techno zombie feel to it.
It feels like the creatures from like the Doom remake, where it's like evil super science merging things that do not belong together very painfully to the person that it happens to.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah. This better not result in more terrible. If I hear that song, I'm going to flip out, Joe. No, I do not want to hear more slash fic. What's your question?
Well, speaking of slash fic targets, what did you think of the Borg Queen? What are your thoughts on the Borg Queen?
It was a good character. It was a good Star Trek villain. It was a good foil and an antagonist to Picard and Data, and seductive and scary and all of that. I think it was a good villain, but I do not think she belonged in the Borg. The Borg are supposed to be a faceless collective and a union of thousands of voices, not a queen pulling all the strings.
I agree. I understand why they felt they needed to do that if they were going to use it as a movie antagonist, because the problem with having a bunch of faceless hive mind drones is that they're not very interesting to interact with.
You can't kill them. You could cut her head off and it's satisfying, but you can't. You've got a Hydra. You've got the mega Hydra. And that's what makes the Borg cool. And that's what makes the Borg scary, is it's not just a head you can cut off.
That is very thematically appropriate, but there was something that always bothered me about the fact that the Borg Queen is basically a vampy, seductive manipulator. Like it had this very specific characterization, and that never really worked for me. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, but I think they just wanted some light bondage scene. I guess it's not light; it's pretty heavy, with Data chained up in the engineering, department, and her coming over and like playing with his arm hair and all that stuff. I think they just wanted like a Data torture porn scene.
Yeah, I guess they did. And they really wanted a BDSM lady to be doing the torture porn. So
they did it, and it worked out well for him. But again, great villain. And I think if they would have put her in any other race, the Soren or anything else, it would have been really cool. But it's not what the Borg are supposed to be about, I think.
Certainly not the actress's issue. She played it up. It was. Yeah. I'm talking more, I guess, about the overall idea of it. But anyway, yeah, Voyager eventually finds the planet, and Chakotay, without any options available to him, decided to kind of go in on the temporary mind link to prevent himself from having a fatal stroke or whatever. And we have a scene where he feels the neuro link from everyone and feels very connected to them, and the healing works.
I want to talk about this. They bring the group of people in, essentially the prayer circle, that are going to create this ad hoc network to give him the healing Wi-Fi, right? This is the good high-speed Wi-Fi. This isn't the free stuff they give you at the airport. And I think one of those dudes was a Talaxian in there. Did you catch him?
I did not catch a Talaxian. I honestly, a lot of the background characters were difficult to determine what was what some of the time.
Pretty sure one was a Talaxian. Now, this is where they really start casting some shadows of doubt for me as to what is this group really about. And my wife's watching. She's like, I want to start watching this with you. Bring me up to speed on what's going on here. And as they start pouring these dudes in the room to begin the prayer circle, and they're giving them like the sales pitch on this, she's like, is this Scientology? And I was like, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Like, there's such heavy cult vibes coming off the way that these people are like staring at Chakotay and like, yes, come to us. This is going to be so good. Drink the Kool-Aid, Chakotay. Look at my eyes, Chakotay. And again, I in my mind, I'm thinking like, still, what if there's an implant? He's really in real life sitting on some stretcher with Borg tech jammed in his temple. And this is what assimilation really is. Like, in the instant it takes to like assimilate someone in their mind in this VR construct, it's a multi-day procedure where you are getting the person you are assimilating to buy in. You can't be forced into the collective. You have to walk in open arms. And this is the elaborate VR ruse. And this is hot on the tail of the Janeway death episode, where we find out about these space parasites that go in people's minds who are about to die, and they have to like con you into going into their space hell so they could feast on your soul. Like, second guess this, Chakotay. This is the cult sales pitch. Do not go into the light.
He does.
And that montage was fucking cool.
They portray the link and how it builds into a cacophony very artistically. The way that they kind of build into it sounding very nice and kind of pleasant at first, and then it becomes more and more sounding like the Borg. And they intersperse that with like different visions that are obviously coming from the cult circle and all of that. It's, again, the delicately sinister nature of what these people are up to is communicated in a subtle way that I appreciate.
They talk about following the the communal link. And Chakotay's feeling great. He's got a lot of pep in his step. He's talking about what a wonderful experience, how he's never felt so close to so many people, and he is riding high on this experience. And even though and this is where I thought the weak spot of the episode was, because it's that intersection where story and technology don't really jive. They pulled the implant out, and there's this latent psychic buzz he still has. And like when he touches his face, Riley feels it. When she blows, on her palm, he feels it. And they're like, wow, we're basically on ecstasy. Let's go have sex. This is going to be amazing. And it is amazing. And he just rides this thing out. But the group's just like, hey, we are all like, we were feeling really demoralized, but the uniqueness that you brought and the passion and basically all the cool Starfleet attitude from former Maquis terrorists, all this determination, it's really re-energized us. And we are better for the experience. We're glad we could help you, but we definitely took something away from this too. It got me kind of thinking, like, what if once upon a time, and this is what I love about this episode, there's so much cool thought experimentation and what if, and if you're going to tell a Borg story, but you don't put the explicit details on the table and you let people wonder what if and draw their own conclusions. What if once upon a time, the Borg were not unlike the Skevians, who were a very technologically advanced culture, but they've been there, they've done that, and they've seen it all, and they're bored. And they start turning their highest psychological utility, their commodity, becomes other people's experiences and their stories and their literature and blah, blah, blah. But the Borg take it to the next step. They want to live those memories. They want to steal those memories and have it for themselves. And what if the assimilation, the push to assimilate, it's not just about technology, but taking all those individual experiences and bringing it to the collective so everybody might feast upon these things. And you've got this, to take a D&D term here, this sensate like quality, which is a guild of dudes on the outer rim or whatever. Was it Solaria? What's that weird pocket dimension city that's a loop? Sigil, yeah. Sensates work out of there, I believe, and it's, their goal is to go out and experience everything that there is to experience in the universe. And that's just the Borg, and the way they're doing it is by, instead of living those experiences themselves, is finding people who've already done it, and you pull them in and you consume those memories.
The idea of the Borg presents all kinds of interesting opportunities for storytelling that doesn't demystify or otherwise do the Drow treatment to them. This is a great example of, look at all your mind is open up to all these possibilities. You're spitting out all this potential headcanon and explanations and ways to like delve into a deeper psychological drama being played out here that does make them more compelling as a long-term fixture in a show like this. And the fact that they punt on really like following through on any of this, that this represents more or less one of the better Borg episodes we're ever going to get to see, is what's so ultimately disappointing to them, because they didn't actually take the right lesson from this episode. They didn't take from this like, oh, what makes the Borg scary is all of the subtle ways that even if you're free of them, you're never free of them. Something that Patrick Stewart does such a great job of portraying for his entire time playing Picard after Best of Both Worlds. They do capture some of that here, and then they just like, obviously 7 of 9 comes around, but that's an entirely different type of way of approaching it, and it's never quite the same.
No, what we're looking at here is wounded victims. And I think,
who are not fully understanding of what has been done to them. That, I think, is the key. They do not appear to be malicious and don't understand the depths to which that they have been driven as a consequence of their experiences.
Now's the right time to talk about Picard too. Why, Picard was able to move past this traumatic experience. Certainly he spent less time as a Borg drone than the rest of them did, but whereas another Starfleet officer, Dr. Riley, succumbs to these weaknesses, I think ultimately you're dealing with Picard, who is someone with extraordinary willpower, who has been through much worse things and come out, with his chin up high. I think also the fact that these people were in a group, it makes it easier when there's a diffusion of responsibility to quote unquote do the right thing, and everybody just kind of talks themselves into a bad idea. Ultimately, Voyager shows up. They pull Chakotay back up to the ship, and he brings Riley with him. And this is all post like ecstasy sex. And they sales pitch him. They say, "Hey, the solution to our problems, we can get everybody to get along just fine if we can just kind of get everybody back on the same wavelength, literally. And to do that, we just need to turn on this one little part of the Borg cube ship just for a couple seconds. It'll just get everybody to be willing to cooperate, and it'll be great." And Janeway takes a real interesting role in this conversation because normally she just comes out swinging hard nose and real unilateral stuff. And in this one, they dismiss Riley, and she turns to Chakotay and says, "What am I supposed to do here? Give me your input, clue me in." And Chakotay is like, "I want to tell you everything's great and we should trust him, but I'm a Starfleet officer and I understand the risks here, and I don't want to be in your shoes."
I like Chakotay in this episode a lot. And, we talked about last week if our liking Chakotay thing would continue. I feel like it really kind of held together pretty well.
Wholeheartedly.
I guess it's worth pointing out, and I promise you this is not an excuse to read /fiction. Given what we had to suffer through last week, that relief, yes. Given what we had to suffer through last week of the show being desperate to not let anyone have sex, the fact that they run it up to this, hey, these two are like psychically bonded, they're super into each other as a consequence, and they fuck, and they go from there in the episode, I thought was like, whoa, okay. I guess we're out of the not having people have sex mode all of a sudden.
And I read that really pissed a lot of people, like the Janeway Chakotay boyfriend girlfriend fan club.
Oh, the shippers did not like that? That's funny. I'm not surprised because what I guess I really liked about it though was that he has that experience, and the trope in that case is Chakotay becomes the dumb animal man, right? And now he's being thinking with his dick, and he wants to help these people out, and he's going to do some shit he shouldn't do as a consequence. Like with Seska, how he's like got all connected to all of that, and
the trope
used to bang and all that.
Chakotay gets played,
right? But in this case, he says, "You know what? We probably shouldn't do it. We probably shouldn't risk it."
Yeah.
He actually takes a second, recognizes his bias, and says, if I'm taking myself out of the equation and I'm putting myself in your shoes, probably not the right move. And that's why I really like Chakotay this episode, is that's I don't know if that was intended character growth, but at least it kind of felt like it is,
Yeah, absolutely. So they, and he even says, look, I'll be the one to tell her that we've decided no. So it really seems like he is his own man again and thinking free and clear. We cut down to the surface, and you got Neelix and some other people. They've given the co-op, which is what the good former drone circle enclave calls itself. They've given them medical supplies and refreshed some other stuff, which is mighty generous of the Federation to give their old mortal enemies parts of their very limited stores. And they take off. They depart. We've got Chakotay back in a shuttle with B'Elanna, and they are... Did they recover that shuttle, or did that thing get parted out?
They say they recovered the shuttle that Chakotay was on, that the stunned B'Elanna was left in, that got by the Gat.
So they're flying, and B'Elanna knows, again, this is her best friend. She gives him some, some warm advice. Hey, you just need to get your ass kicked in some more racquetball. He's like, yeah, I'll take you up on that. And then Chakotay starts hearing voices. And it's a good fake out. We thought this is the end of the episode. No, there's more to go here. B'Elanna's like, whoa, listen, I was just space crazy a couple hours ago with Pon Farr. Maybe we should turn around. And then Chakotay's like, why don't you get your hands off that console? And he's got the phaser on her. He just fucking blasts her point blank, and I lose it laughing.
the point blank gut shot was I don't want to say it was comedically timed on purpose, but the way it's done is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
There's like this beat where B'Elanna's like, wait, and then he's like,
very not Starfleet.
Yeah, it's very just like, black. Yeah.
He flies off to the Borg cube, and he is now being like remote administrated by the collective. Down on the surface, the alien or the Raider factions are attacking. They're banging on the door to the co-op literally with a battering ram, and the co-op is on its knees. And in their time of great need, they have united their powers to summon Captain Planet, but it's Commander Chakotay, which I guess Chakotay'd be a good Captain Planet stand-in. He's a naturalist, right?
He's an Indian. He loves the
He's
Earth
a vegetarian.
Mother. And a vegetarian, yeah.
That tattoo's kind of blue on his face. Just get him a green mullet and he's good to go. We saw he already looks good in a silver skin suit from last episode. He gets up on the Borg cube, and they're just telling him, hey, you got to turn to the left down this hallway, right over here, flip this switch, do that. And he is fully under their spell. I don't know if, was it neural peptides or some bullshit?
Yeah, that's the exact phrasing. They say neural peptides quite a bit to describe why it is this worked, but the excuse is the magic space juice that allowed Chakotay to heal kind of like lingered in his consciousness for a while, and that allowed the cooperative to manipulate him so that he would go onto the cube and reactivate the thing that needed to be reactivated. So
that Janeway expressly said no. This is the ridiculous part of this episode, that Janeway would find out that her first officer had been soft assimilated, essentially, that he had been brought into a Borg collective, and that she returned him to full authority duty without even so much as a trip to sickbay.
Yeah, the wrap-up scene is very hastened, I guess is the word to describe it.
But he gets on the ship, on the cube. They're telling him what to do. Voyager gets clued in on what's going real quick, and we send over, I don't know, we got Tuvok and Harry Kim. They start looking for him. Eventually they find him, not before Chakotay can just blast Harry in the gut, too. They stun Chakotay up, but of course, on his way down, he flips a switch, and the cooperative is able to exert its influence over the rest of the outcasts, reunifies them, and communicates a message in our typical Borg voice, albeit very friendly, that, hey, sorry we had to do that. It was a do or die. We are very apologetic. This is the way it had to go, but we will not forget your kindness, and have a safe one.
They, again, sound really like positive and non-threatening, and I would say good. But what they just did was essentially hijack Chakotay's brain to make him steal away the individuality of everybody on the planet, which is certainly a giant Federation no-no, at a minimum. They're left to contemplate during the wrap-up scene like the moral implications of what the collective, the cooperative is versus the collective, if it's going to be a threat and all that. And they don't go too far into it, but I still like kind of the moral ambiguity of it, all of it.
I still would not say what they did was wrong. Certainly it's not Federation, but we have seen the Federation shoot itself in the foot to terrible detriment over and over again with some misplaced morals, and I would not blame the collective if it were not for the fact that Chakotay didn't tell them, hey, get off of this dump. There's a better life in the stars with us. You used to be Starfleet. You can still, get back in the saddle. We're willing to accept you. And they chose to stay on planet Hell because they knew that the only way to fix the situation down there was going to be space drug of shared mind, and that's what he said. That's what they wanted, and they engineered the situation, so that's what they fell into.
Which is why ultimately I think it's a quote unquote the wrong thing to do. because they took a pass on the ways to fix the problem that did not involve mind raping everyone on the planet. And so that's bad.
Casey pointed out something when I was watching this because, she's like, what's this episode? And I said, Unity. And she said, oh, is that the name of the alien that's doing this? Like that Rick and Morty episode. And it reminded me of Rick's girlfriend, which is the hive mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a lot of similarities between those two episodes. And I'm sure one had to influence, the other, Voyager influencing them, that when the hive mind withdraws its influence off of the population of this planet, like these people are all fucking miserable, racist jerks who, start murdering each other in the streets. And I think in the Rick and Morty, they certainly make it seem a much more humane situation to subject them all to the mind control. They're happy, productive people that just can't function correctly otherwise. So fun glimpses into Star Trek's influence over some other mediums.
The Rick and Morty episode, like so many other Rick and Morty episodes, are products of genre, I don't want to say satire. And this is the sort of thing that obviously inspires that kind of satire.
Yeah.
It's maybe it pays for you and I in particular as we go through this show to appreciate that a lot of the time, these are the kind of test bed of ideas. We're talking about TV that's at this point nearly, 22, 23 years old, coming up on a quarter century old. And when they have a well-meaning miss, it's mostly because they're trying to do something that's a little off the wall.
They're pathfinding. They're going down new story ideas, and something like this might seem like it's been retread a few times, but I'm willing to believe that this might be one of the first times this structure of a story has ever been told before. All in all, I love this episode. It was great Star Trek. It was great sci-fi. It was great acting. It was great directing. Beltrain really holds down the fort with Chakotay. The script holds up, and I think Robert Duncan McNeil did a great job directing.
Yeah, minor nitpicks aside about some of how the story ramps out. This was really a lot, very interesting to watch, very well put together. It begs interesting philosophical questions about the actions of who they deal with in this episode, and leaves you thinking more and more about what the Borg are and what they mean without telling you too much, and is unfortunately a line that Voyager does not hold on to as often as you would hope. So
I would say that I would call this a great adjacent story to something that's been established. It's able to tell a story in a sandbox. It's a good, I don't want to say what if, but just different way of looking at things. And I think that's the right way to handle established stuff. And I am not looking forward to seeing what the other side of that coin is. But moving forward, we're going to be getting into season 3, episode 18, Darkling. And we see Kes in a one-piece red spandex outfit, and there's the EMH, and he's grabbing her by the arm, and looks like he's about to give her a hypospray she doesn't want. The Doctor incorporates the personalities of several historical figures into his programming. B'Elanna warns him the results could be unfavorable. Usually these Robert Picardo-centric EMH episodes are really good, but man, I do not like historical figures in Star Trek, and this scares me.
I have a great deal of faith in the power of Robert Picardo, and this is I'm happy to tell you that this is one of the better episodes of the show. I'm not going to say it's like top 10 material, but I remember it well. I remember well because the Doctor's awesome, and you should enjoy this one.
All right, I'm willing to trust in that. To congratulate Unity and actually being a really, really good episode, I've broke out the old rules of acquisition. And
I'd say it's worthy. Go for it.
I dub this Rule 168, recognizing the persuasive power of the co-op's voice. in Chakotay's ear. Whisper your way to success.
That's very effective. Very appropriate. Well selected, sir. And we will continue our selection of Voyager next week with Darkling. Thanks, as always, to Ian and Sarah for our lovely theme music. Thank you to all of the V'ger Please family out there who have been liking and sharing our content. You know, we always appreciate that.
Shame on any of you who have sent Joe this vile fan fiction that you try to pollute our wholesome podcast with.
Send me more.
Shame.
Send it all to me. As always, if you wish to send us an email, if you would like to have something that you would like us to talk about on air, you may always do so at vgerplease@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll also have some announcements about a live stream. We're due to do a mess hall here soon. We'll figure that out. We just want to get fully back into the swing of doing episodes, but mess hall coming soon. You can count on that, and some other announcements as well. So until then, join us next week for Darkling. Peace.